Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to another video, this one in a slightly different style, where I'm going to cover the evolution of a specific weapon, and of course we have to start with the most iconic weapon from Warhammer 40k, the Bolter. Let's get into it. The Bolter is of course probably the most 40k weapon in 40k. You may debate that, but I mean think about it. It has ridiculous proportions, insane specifications, it's loud, it's damaging, it blows people to pieces, even if it only barely hits them. It is quite literally the epitome of everything that makes 40k ridiculous and why we all love it. But part of its reputation is also that on the tabletop it is kind of comedically weak. This has been a meme in the sort of the fandom for really as long as I can remember. For as long as I've been in it at least. But I wanted to see just how weak it was, and to see if it was ever stronger or even weaker than we know it is today. So, as I said, let's get to it, starting with the very beginning, Rogue Trader. In a very strange era, where Birmingham was a planet full of people that were insane wielding muskets, and orcs had females and had kangaroo pouches. How did the Bolter fare? In reality, the Bolter really slipped into where it would always be for the rest of its life, a low-strength infantry killer. This was still when short and long range existed, and if you don't know what that means, at short range you would get +1 to hit, and at long range you would get +0 to hit, being 24 inches max range, so anything 12 inches or less. Of course, instead, if someone was exactly 12 inches away from each other, you would both look at each other and get into a long-winded debate about why it should be short range or long range. But one thing that's interesting, as Rogue Trader uses an AP system very similar to what we use today in 10th edition, is that it actually had AP1, which actually means that this one is in some ways stronger than our current Bolter. But it didn't have rapid fire baked in. That was actually a rule that belonged to these beakies. If they didn't move, they could shoot their bolters twice, which is sort of where rapid firing bolters got its start. But what about when Warhammer really entered the mainstream, as mainstream as it could be? Second edition, the Technicolor, really the universe being fleshed out a lot, but it still had some of the strange artifacts of Rogue Trader, with its slightly bizarre and completely out of whack rules that I personally quite enjoy, no matter how ridiculous they are, such as its combat, which feels much more at home in something like Necromunda, which it still uses a similar system to this day. But the Bolter is actually the exact same as it was in Rogue Trader, having the AP and being good at close range, making it actually pretty fearsome, If you think about it, a big ranked up squad of these guys, if they got within 12 inches, could really tear some light infantry and even some armored infantry up pretty well. But then came the late 90s with 3rd edition. 3rd edition really set the groundwork for what Warhammer would be for a very long time, and as well as refining the era, or refining the setting to what we know it as today. Much grimmer, much darker, and much less silliness that was still apparent in the echoes of Rogue Trader in 2nd edition. But it also was a complete overhaul of the rules for the most part, and one of the most emblematic changes of that is probably the Bolter. The Bolter was still 24-inch range, but short and long range were gone, so it got its only bonus at close range was now that it gained rapid fire. So you can shoot twice within 12 inches, or if you moved and got within 12 inches, you could shoot once. It still retained its strength of 4, and had an AP 5. If you're not familiar with how AP worked in older editions, AP was flat. So if the Bolter shot at, say, an Orc, which had a 6+ save, the Orc would get no save. But if it shot at a Space Marine who had save 3+, the Space Marine would just get a 3+ save. AP worked very differently. It's sort of up to you on how you decide if it's better or not. Personally, I prefer the new system, but there is something to be said for this system. And also, as I said, it gained rapid fire on its profile, meaning that was no longer exclusive to the Space Marines, who are undeniably its most iconic leader. Now, from 4th to 7th edition, Warhammer went through changes, many of them, but One of the things that didn't really change was the core weapon rules. While there were new weapon rules added, they functioned the same. They were still 24-inch range, strength 4, AP 5, and rapid fire. Um, and this makes the bolters sort of longish stretch using one set of rules, totaling out to be, let's see, from 3rd to 7th would be 5 editions, counting 3rd edition, where the bolter was it technically had AP, unlike its modern day counterpart, but it was only good against the lightest armored enemies, Imperial Guard and Orcs, pretty much, and Eldar Guardians. But aside from that, it functioned the exact same within 3rd edition. 8th and 9th edition, The Great Rebirth. With 8th edition, the game overwent a major overhaul, removing the need for most of the charged templates, armor facings, and introducing multi-wound units outside of characters and other such exceptions. But one thing that didn't really change was weapons. The AP system changed, but that's about it. And it introduced weapon types instead of universal special rules. So the bolter lost its AP, so it became less effective against everything. But it gained Rapid Fire 1, and Space Marines, in particular, actually got their rapid fire rules back, so if they stood still, they got to double tap their bolters. And interestingly enough, the bolter is back to how it was really in 2nd edition, minus the AP, as weapons were much similar now in 8th and 9th to how they were in 2nd. And that brings us about to the end of our journey, but with 10th edition, the bolter's most recent and final form. And really, the bolter hasn't changed that much over time. It's always been pretty good at killing light infantry and not much else. And 10th edition, that is no difference. But one thing that is sort of somber is that the bolter has all but left the hands of its loyalist brethren, being superseded by its younger brother, the bolt rifle, wielded by the Primaris intercessors. Now the only squads that use standard bolters are tactical marines, and Devastator sergeants can take them, and their squad mates can take them, but that's it. The bolter is really on its way out in the hands of the loyalist space marines, but the traders and the sisters still keep it alive as their iconic weapons. And this time, it has actually changed slightly in that Space Marines always get 2 attacks. The sisters version has Rapid Fire 1, so it gets 2 attacks within half range. They hit on 3s with that classic Strength 4, AP 0, and Damage 1. So that brings us to the end of our story, and it's actually interesting to see that in reality the bolter really peaked in Rogue Trader in 2nd edition. But even though the bolter remains a rather weak weapon on the tabletop, its stockless design and curved magazine remain iconic and will till the end of 40k as we know it. Even the bolt rifle, its successor, still very much is a bolter, just a little longer. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.